Welcome to Audacity Works, a podcast inspired by and dedicated to the working artist, the creative entrepreneur, and generally, doing the damn thing. This exists on the premise that the world belongs to those who have the audacity to believe that their lives have value. This is for you. Welcome to Audacity Works. I am your host, Rachel Strickland, and this is episode number 129, and it is about product-based versus process-based work. But first, I have some updates. Also, if you can hear my husband with the lawnmower in the background, sorry, there's nothing I can do about that. He is vacuuming up the leaves. Now, there is an attachment that fits onto our lawnmower, and they call it a leaf vacuum. It's not. It's more like a broom, and it sweeps up leaves into this holding thing so that we can carry them somewhere else. We waited until all the bugs in there had time to hatch, apparently. But Rachel, you might say, it's April. Why are you vacuuming up leaves from your yard? Well, because I live in South Carolina, and the tree that we have most is our live oak trees. Live oak trees are called live oak trees because they're kind of evergreen as well as deciduous. They always have green on them, even in the winter. And they lose their old leaves in the spring after the new leaves have budded out. And when they lose their leaves, they just dump them. It looks like it's raining leaves for weeks. This is like the third time we've had to do this. And that's not even part of the updates I wanted to tell you. It's just what's happening outside my window. Okay, update. Update number 1, I am delighted to announce that I'm one of the artists in residence at a local studio here, a lovely space called Take 2 Studios. If you're local to Charleston and you listen to this podcast, you already know about it. But I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes anyway. This has been a quest of mine for a while now, and I am so relieved to have a space to create because I have a date for the next chunk of my show, The Monstrous Feminine, which is going to be put on in the Queen Street Playhouse on June 20th as a guest for the main event, which is local dancer Georgia Shroob's group piece, The Yellow Wallpaper. So, a little bit of a double billing. Lots more details in the Patreon. If you're a patron, I'm going to link that in the show notes as well, so you don't have to go looking for it. But it's some good news. We got some good news going on here. Update number 2. My dad had a hip replacement on his right hip on Tuesday. So, by the time this airs, it'll be like a little bit over a week. Now, Dad does not live in the house with us. He lives in a little camper in the back because we have a significant amount of land. You know, it's almost 6 acres. But a surgery like that means he had to move into the house and his dog had to move onto the front porch, and neither one of them liked that very much. But he is healing really well. He decided yesterday he didn't need his walker 5 days post-op from when I'm recording this anyway. And so he switched to a cane, but he doesn't use the cane. He just twirls it and does Charlie Chaplin impressions. So yeah, Dad's doing great. Glad to report that. If you have parents or know anyone who is about to get this surgery, that's not a normal recovery time. Normal recovery is like 2 to 4 weeks. Not saying he's recovered, but most people aren't walking around with no support 5 days post-op of a hip replacement. He's just really robust and difficult to control. Not that that's something I have any desire to do, but sometimes you just gotta be like, hey, maybe it's not a good idea to drive yet. Stop it. So anyway, that's what's going on at my house. We also had what I think was the 4th Charleston Artists Salon last night. We're still looking for a permanent space to hold the salon. A movement space would be ideal because it's serviceable for all kinds of artists. But it was hosted by our own Shannon and Charles Carmody. It was one of the smaller ones. There were 6 people, including myself, but it was absolutely lovely. Just saying what we needed to say, like, this is what I'm doing, this is what I need, this is how I feel about it. Do you know anyone who does this? Oh, yes, I do know someone who does this. Oh, great. And just like sharing resources. It's tremendous and it's very sustainable, especially the way that we do it because it's every other month, just about. And I did record a podcast episode on this, on like how to organize a salon. So if you're interested, I'm going to find that and I'm going to put that in the show notes as well, because every time after we hold one of these, I'm like, why aren't these everywhere? Why did these like fall out of fashion? They are tremendously beneficial and they're not at all labor intensive, at least not the way I designed it. It doesn't have to be anyway. So check that. If this sounds like, oh, that does sound tasty, maybe I'll do that here in my own community. Yes, if you're having that thought, yes, I think you should. And I'm going to put that podcast in the show notes just in case it's helpful to you in getting that together. As well, in the show notes, if you're local to Charleston, I'll put a link to tag yourself as local to me so that you'll hear about these before they happen. Okay, let's get to the meat and potatoes. This episode is about product-based versus process-based work. And I was talking to my friend Kat about this a couple of weeks ago. And if you're not familiar, let's just put it in like really simple terms. Product-based is what most of us are doing. All right. We set out to create an act, a film, a show, a workshop, a piece of music, a novel, a thing that will then be more or less completed and can then be repeated many times with some alterations if it's a live performance. Process-based work, by comparison, has no end product or no goal. In fact, it seeks not to be easily repeatable because it's not about repeating an end product. It's about what is discovered in the moment as it's being researched and created. So let's look at why I said the thing that most of us are doing is making product-based work. Why are most of us making product-based work? Well, I think the answer to that is capitalism. Because you can sell a product and we all have to survive. It is a lot harder to sell a process. Or at least it's a lot less common. I am sure that it is more easily done in other disciplines rather than aerial work or performance art. And I'll even say music, because music is a performing art. However, I could conceive of a situation in which a musician just improvises and plays, and that's it, you sell that. I've also seen this done with live painting. Of course, there is always a product at the end of painting. Correct me if I'm wrong, painters. I'm not a painter. But I assume that once paint gets mashed around in some form or fashion, at the end of the day, there is something, even if it's not finished. I have seen it done with poetry, where it's just thought up on the spot and not recorded or written down, but I've never seen it sold. That doesn't mean anything. I'm not like on the cutting edge of poetry at all. Now, my own experiences are very informed by product-based work because of said capitalism, and also like a fish doesn't know that it's wet. And I've been doing this for 18 years. 18 years ago, I was pretty young. And if you had even mentioned the phrase process-based artist to me, I'd be like, what the hell is that? And I went to the liberal arts university. The reason I wanted to talk about this today is because I have like a great many students who feel very resistant to setting choreography. They feel a great pressure to do so, and I understand why, because it's easy to sell something that exists, and it's a lot harder to sell something that doesn't exist, especially if you don't have a lot of evidence to back up your expertise. Like once you sell, God, I'm so tired of saying the word sell. Ugh. But there's no shame in the game because guess what? We got to put food on the table. So anyway, a lot of them just feel really pressured to set choreography and to make pieces in this product-based work, but it's not actually why they engage in their discipline at all. They're like, I just want to noodle around and like discover things. And I go into the studio and I noodle for like 4 hours. And I'm like, what's that like? I've never been that kind of creator. And I've not been that kind of aerialist. I've recorded on this before when someone asked me to talk about the flow state. And if you feel a distance from your flow state, and I had to admit, like, I don't work in a flow state. That's not something that I can resonate with. It sounds great, but I don't do it. Maybe I've tasted it a time or two. I'm sure it was very tasty, but it's not like a natural thing that just occurs to me. And I think that people tend towards one way of working or the other, and that it can be really difficult to appreciate the other side if it's not the way that you naturally want to create. So let's we'll start out with my perspective, right? Because I live in here and it's easy for me to give. Generally, I am product-based. Whether or not that's purely a result of capitalism or just because I like to make things and then be done with them and be like, look, I made a thing. Now I'm going to move on with my life, make something else. Both are true. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know. And if you told me to make a process-based piece of work, that would require a lot of brain gymnastics from me. Alternatively, I have participated in artist residencies that were process-based, not product-based. And that, my friends, was fucking wonderful because there was nothing, I didn't need to produce anything. I could just experiment and research. And it was great, but I wouldn't exactly know how to approach a process-based project because I don't know. What do you do? I suspect we would set some parameters, like create a container of some kind, and then just improvise, I guess. If someone knows more about this, y'all need to let me know. So as far as research and experimentation goes, awesome. Love process-based. But if it came to, this is now like a project that you're going to do, it's process-based. Be like, but I don't get it. What do I do? When do you stop? And then on the flip side, I'm listening to my students really battle with this. They're like, I'm trying to make this act. I've made acts before. I don't really enjoy doing it. I don't enjoy setting the choreography. I just want to play and experiment and put that on stage. Now, if you asked me to get on stage and improvise and just like find a flow state, I'm using quotations, you can't see me, I would be like, I gotta go. I've got to wash my cat or something. That sounds horrifying to me, but improvisation has never been a strong skill of mine. So for me personally, I find a great deal of freedom in set choreography because when the choreography is set, I have a safety and I can find freedom within that structure. I'm also a big fan of not over-rehearsing something because I don't want it to be a possibility that I can go on autopilot. I want to be in the room and be in the moment the whole time. And if I'm over-rehearsed, that makes it more difficult for me to do. But yeah, that would be very tricky, very challenging for me if you were like, just go improvise, unless it was an ambient set at like a corporate party or whatever, because nobody's looking at you anyway. Knock yourself out, have a good time. So I've been sitting here trying to appreciate it from the other side, trying to put myself into the mind of someone who is very gifted at improvisation and finds great joy in it and feels really resistant to setting it. And it's it's very hard for me to appreciate. And I think that there is fear involved on both sides. One, I know why I am afraid of creating a project that is process-based. One, I don't really know what that means in terms of like a project. And I find a lot of comfort in having a finished product. I get a lot of joy from that. I get a lot of pleasure out of making it. But also, I just don't have the skill set to like go up there and improvise for ages. And I don't think that it would, I don't know. Maybe I should try this. Maybe I should just challenge myself. But I can tell you what, for my show on the 20th, I'm not going to be improvising that shit. That is not the time for me to create that experiment. So you could sum up my fear by one, not having a certain skill set or believing that I don't have that skill set, and also just not wanting it to be quote unquote bad. Did you hear it? I did too. And let's put ourselves in the mind of the improvisational artist, the process-based artist. I'm not even like enough of an expert in this to know if those are two different things. But I do think it's an interesting question. And when I am presented with problems that my students have, one of the questions I'm always asking myself is, where is the hidden fear in what I'm hearing? And what is that fear protecting them from? So I think the answer here lies in why would one feel resistant to setting choreography and being brutally honest about that. I liken it to an exercise in the Audacity project called the declaration statement, where you just like describe your discipline and what you do in one sentence. And a lot of people are really resistant to that exercise, not even because they don't want to just say what they are and what they do, but because they don't want to be boxed in. They don't want to be limited by the thing that they are most knowledgeable or skilled in. And while I get that, and I can appreciate that, it's also very much gremlin territory, because it's not doing anyone any favors. It's like the not wanting to be boxed in means that you're not clear on what it is that you do in the first place. And that's just hidden perfectionism. It's like not wanting to choose something because you might choose the quote unquote wrong thing. So if your resistance to setting your work is coming from not wanting to make an incorrect choice, I think you already know what I'm going to say about that. In the words of my dear Uncle Bradley, it appears you have an opportunity to grow. And one way you can find out, like, is this gremlin territory, or is this like legitimately counter to my zone of genius? One way you can find that out is by looking at your big dream, your like objective, your goal. If you have a big bad dream of performing in a cabaret, which is set pieces of work performed over and over again, but you're resistant to setting choreography, that's cognitive dissonance. There's a tension between where you most desire to go and the kind of work you most desire to be doing and how you're going about creating your work. There's tension there, which means either we need to reinvestigate what the big bad dream is, or investigate if you're just being nommed on by gremlins. If you come out on the other side of this like self-investigation and you've realized, eureka, actually, I'm not interested in set choreography at all. I'm only interested in the boundless experimentation of creating in the moment. And like, that's what is exciting to me about making work. And if that is indeed the case, my friends, then we just need to find objectives that honor how you create work and stop trying to be like the square peg in the round hole. I am interested in learning more about like what I'll use the term genuine process-based working if it's not directed by gremlins, but it's really like how you want to work. I'm super interested in how that looks and what it's like in terms of being a working artist and taking your work into the world. If you want to hear more about this and you are a process-based artist or you know of one, maybe I should talk to them. And if you just like want to hear more about it at all, let me know. Because you know me, if 2 people tell me they want to hear something, I'll go do it. So I'm looking at the time now, and we are a little past 20 minutes, and I have a workshop to go teach downtown tonight. So I'm going to sign off and say that if you do want to contact me for this or you have other requests for future episodes, you can contact me on Instagram always at Rachel Strickland Creative or on Patreon at Rachel Strickland Creative. This podcast is powered by Patreon, so extra special shout out to my patrons who make this podcast and so much more possible for me. Thank you for believing in me. And whatever your process is, I hope that you are trusting it and investigating it in equal measure. If this was helpful to you or useful to you, the greatest compliment you could pay me would be to, 1, sign up on the Patreon. I would love that. Or to share it with someone who you thought it could help. Or both. So until next time, my friends, thank you so much for listening and happy creating. Don't go back to sleep.